The Second Amendment to the United States Constitution reads, "A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." Ratified in 1791, it was part of the Bill of Rights. The founders valued a well-armed citizenry. They had seen British attempts to disarm colonists. This memory shaped their views. The Second Amendment is a safeguard against government overreach and tyranny. The Founding Fathers believed that a well-armed citizenry was vital for the security and freedom of the new nation. They saw a direct connection between the right to bear arms and the ability to defend against public and private violence. This belief was rooted in their experiences during the American Revolutionary War. Many of the founders, including Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, emphasized the importance of the militia. They argued that a well-armed populace could act as a counterbalance to an oppressive government. This was a time when the line between military and civilian roles was blurred. Militia members were ordinary citizens who took up arms when necessary. The idea was that every able-bodied man could be called upon to defend the community. This decentralized military power was seen as a deterrent against tyranny. It also promoted a sense of civic duty and responsibility among the populace. The notion of relying on a citizen militia rather than a standing army was deeply ingrained in early American political thought. The Anti-Federalists were a group of individuals who opposed the creation of a strong federal government. They were wary of centralized power and preferred local control. One of their significant concerns was the potential for a federal standing army to be used for oppressive purposes. The Anti-Federalists argued that a standing army could become a tool of tyranny. They believed that the best defense against this was a well-armed populace. For them, the Second Amendment was crucial for ensuring that the federal government could not disarm citizens. They saw this right as a fundamental safeguard against the concentration of power. Prominent Anti-Federalists like Patrick Henry and George Mason were vocal about their fears. They argued that history had shown how governments often used standing armies to suppress freedoms. Their arguments played a significant role in the adoption of the Second Amendment. They wanted to ensure that states retained the power to maintain militias composed of their citizens. In contrast, the Federalists believed in the necessity of a strong, centralized military. They argued that a unified national defense was essential for the survival of the Republic. Figures like Alexander Hamilton and James Madison supported the idea of a standing army to protect the nation from external threats. The Federalists acknowledged the concerns about tyranny, but believed that checks and balances could mitigate these risks. They argued that a disorganized militia could not provide the same level of defense as a professional army. The Federalist Papers, particularly those written by Hamilton, articulated these points clearly. Despite their support for a standing army, the Federalists also recognized the importance of a well-armed citizenry. They did not see these two concepts as mutually exclusive. While they supported a professional military, they also believed in the right of individuals to keep and bear arms. This dual approach aimed to balance national defense needs with protections against potential government overreach and tyranny. Section 5. Evolution of the traditional militia. The concept of the militia has evolved significantly since the 18th century. Initially, militias were local groups of armed citizens ready to defend their communities. These militias played a crucial role during the Revolutionary War. They were seen as a vital component of the nation's defense strategy. However, as the United States grew, the need for a more organized and professional military became apparent. The traditional militia system began to decline. By the 19th century, the federal government started to take more control over military organization. This shift was marked by the establishment of the National Guard. The National Guard serves as a modern equivalent of the traditional militia. It operates under a dual state-federal role and can be called upon for both local and national emergencies. This evolution reflects changes in the nation's defense needs. The Second Amendment's original militia context has thus been reinterpreted over time. Section 6. Changes in military structure over time. The structure of the United States military has changed significantly since the Second Amendment. Initially, the nation relied on state militias. These were volunteers with their own weapons. New challenges necessitated a centralized professional military. The Civil War exposed the militia system's limitations. This led to a structured military apparatus. Today, the U.S. military has distinct branches: Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps. The National Guard still embodies the spirit of the original militias. Section 7, Modern Legal Landscape, District of Columbia vs. Heller. The interpretation of the Second Amendment has been a subject of legal debate for centuries. One of the landmark cases in this context is District of Columbia vs. Heller, decided in 2008. This Supreme Court decision had a profound impact on modern Second Amendment jurisprudence. In Heller, the court held that the Second Amendment protects an individual's right to possess a firearm. This decision was significant because it shifted the focus from a collective right tied to militia service to an individual right. The ruling struck down a Washington, D.C. law that heavily restricted handgun ownership. Justice Antonin Scalia, who wrote the majority opinion, emphasized the historical context of the Second Amendment. He ruled that the right to bear arms was understood as an individual right by the Founding Fathers. This decision has since influenced numerous other cases and legislative actions related to gun rights. Section 8, Modern Legal Landscape, McDonald v. City of Chicago. Another critical case in the interpretation of the Second Amendment is McDonald v. City of Chicago, decided in 2010. This Supreme Court decision extended the individual right to bear arms, recognized in Heller, to the states. It applied the Second Amendment to state and local governments through the 14th Amendment. In McDonald, the court struck down Chicago's handgun ban, which was similar to the D.C. law challenged in Heller. The decision reinforced the notion that the Second Amendment protects an individual right. It also highlighted the importance of this right in self-defense. Justice Samuel Alito, who wrote the majority opinion, ruled that the right to bear arms is fundamental to the American scheme of ordered liberty. This case has had a lasting impact on gun laws across the country. It has also fueled ongoing debates about the scope and limits of the Second Amendment. Section 9. Conclusion: the ongoing relevance and debates. The Second Amendment continues to be a topic of significant debate in modern America. Its historical origins provide a foundation for understanding these discussions. The Founding Fathers' belief in a well-armed citizenry and the original context of the militia have evolved over time. Modern legal interpretations, such as those in Heller and McDonald, have shaped the current understanding of the Second Amendment. These cases have affirmed the individual right to bear arms, while also raising questions about the extent of this right. The balance between public safety and individual freedoms remains a contentious issue. As society changes, the meaning of the Second Amendment remains the same. It secures the fundamental individual right to keep and bear arms. The ongoing debates about gun control, self-defense, and the role of government reflect the dynamic nature of the Second Amendment. Its relevance endures, rooted in the nation's history and evolving with its future. Keep your head down and your powder dry.